are so back, guys. We got a top 4% finish in EPL Group A, which means 18 points after our dry run to kick off this season. We're finally getting some good drafts into the mix, and it came off of the pick into Astralis, going into the top 2 teams rather than going into Game Legion or Furia. Despite the fact that both teams couldn't go to that top final, I knew that Astralis would do the good run in the lower final. They delivered. Blameath absolutely farmed. Nealon didn't cost us too much, actually got 1 point overall, and everyone else performed pretty well. I will also say I was correct about the art call. Art was in all of the top 1% drafts for this event, and I think he got around 80 points for most people. So happy that I got that call right, even if I was wrong about the art Zai-Wu combo. It was stinks to go into. I got the art bit right. Also, boosters, I got 11 activations, which put me top 1%. Rolls, not so great. I had some bad players with roll points, but overall, I think a big tip for these groups is to make sure that you emphasize high activation boosters and rolls on the players that are going to be going through with the most padding, right? So you can get an extra 10 points per round, purely from the rolls and boosters. Put those under the players that are going to get 3 rounds of padding to emphasize those padding points. But off the back of this game, we are now number 16 on the celebrity leaderboard. I was like 20 something, I was all the way down here. So I bounced back, pretty big jump, and I'm only 10 points off the top 10. So I feel like a couple more good drafts through this group stage, and I'll be right back in contention. Let's talk Group B. 8 teams as usual, and there are 3 that are obviously not going to end up in the top 4. That's Rooster, MIBR, and EG. So we're avoiding them like the plague. We want to pick into teams that go into the top 4, which is the upper final and the lower final. The top 2, I think, are pretty obvious. Heroic and Ents. Everyone's buying into this. They're the most picked players. Makes sense. In every matchup they play, they will be the favourites until the upper final, where it's 50-50 as to whether Heroic or Ents wins that, but it doesn't matter. They're the top 2 teams. The question is, who's going to be in that lower final? This is my prediction. And yes, you may be a little surprised at how I've put this, but let me explain. The most important matchup, I think, in this group for our drafts is going to be Big vs Monty. That's at Wednesday, 3 p.m, first game, the most important, because the winner of that will end up in the bottom half of the lower bracket, which means that they'll be versing either EG or MIBR to get into the lower final. Both Big and Monty are favoured in that matchup. The loser will verse Rooster, which is a nice easy game, good for farming points. However, they will most likely be versing Mals in the lower semi. For me, this game is a 50-50. I've put Monty. The main reason for that is my problem with Mals, and it's always been my problem with Mals, is that they don't play enough officials. They played in Thunderpick. That's like the only thing they've really played properly with this roster. They did really well, beat a bunch of tier 2 teams, beat Big as well, but it's not enough to convince me. It was like 2 weeks ago. Big and Monty have both been grinding a lot since then. And I think Monty are that team that always does upset somewhere in the bracket and spoils something. So I have them winning that one and then Big actually winning the lower final. So my hot take would be that Big are the Astralis of this group. So with that decided, let's draft. So as mentioned, Heroic and Ents are the best 2 teams to draft into. And so for our first draft, we're actually going to do a Heroic Ents draft. In terms of the players to pick, for me, I'm going to start with Heroic. I'm going to go into Cadian and we're going to go into Yabi. I think with Heroic, with any event like this, it's kind of RNG as to whether you pick the right Heroic players. I'm going to go on these 2 just because I can get good rolls on Cadian. He's a consistent performer, and I feel like Yabi is going to bounce back. I know he's been on a downward trend, and Tessus has really been the guy to pick, but Yabi's 4k cheaper, and I feel like against teams like Rooster, teams like Big and Monty, Yabi can actually get a lot done. And so I want to give him a go. I'm going to try him again, and hopefully this time around he will deliver. Going into Ents, you have to pick Snappy. You can't do a Heroic Ents draft without picking Snappy because everyone's above 200k except for him. So you have to get Snappy, and the question is, who do we run with him? We can't get Nets and Sunpires because they're a little bit too expensive unless we sacrifice Cadian, but we want to go in on Cadian. Which means Madden and Diha are the 2 to choose between. And again, I think it's a similar story where, like, with Heroic, with Ents, you just gotta hope you pick the right players. Both Madden and Diha can have really good games. I will say though, I think Diha has less potential to drop off completely in a game, whereas Madden sometimes does that. And I think with padding on the line, I prefer to pick into a consistent player. So I'm going to pick out Diha at 204. Now, the question is, who is my fifth? Everyone is picking Shuey, all right? He's in 70% of drafts right now, the most picked player. And it makes sense, right? Mals are a team that you look at in this group as maybe being one of the best. I've already shown that, I think they are pretty good. I'm not 100% confident on them though. And I think there is a better choice. That choice is Process. 185k, so 5k more, but we can still get a good heroic ends combo with him. And take a look at these numbers. This is Shuey, 0.94 rating from Thunderpick because that's all they've played this season is one event. They lost one map, so he still, despite only losing a map, has a negative rating. Doesn't fill me with the most confidence because he's got a lot of players on his team that are taking up that rating. He's got players that are farming and he's not going to be stepping up. I know that people are picking him because he's cheap and because we've seen him at his highest highs. We saw him with Gamer Legion, the numbers he could put up, but I'm not convinced. Process, on the other hand, is 5k more, 0.16 rating difference in the same period. And look at the quantity of maps we're playing. That's almost twice as many maps. And he's actually lost a third of those maps, but still has a 0.16 rating difference to Shuey. This guy's been taking on a lot of really good positions in the team. He's been farming with carry level performances against teams like Monte, right? Against really good tier 2 teams. So I feel like when we look at this group, we already looked at what Big can do. I rate them as doing the deep run. I feel like Process is a great pick. I think he's going to be the player to pick into if you want a 1% draft. It's a bold claim, but I think Big are going to do the run, and I think Process is that guy. He's the one to pick. He's going to round up my draft. The Orb Ponderers, same theme. It worked well with our fortune tellers. We're still in the predicting the future. We're pondering our orbs. And this is going to be our draft. Rolls are great as well. Process has Headshot Machine, which has an almost guaranteed activation rate as well. Better than anything you can put on Shuey. So I really like this draft as our heroic ends draft. As always, we have a second draft to deliver, and this one takes a little bit more risks. So we're going to be starting once again with a bit of heroic ends. We're going to go Diha and Madden, middle of the road players, and I feel like with the opponents they're facing, we have a chance to get some carry performances out of cheaper players. We go back to heroic and we grab Tessus. 209k, this guy has been really on an upwards trajectory. He's taken over Yabi and Shush, and I feel like he's a good choice, particularly against the teams they're playing. I feel like he's going to perform really well. To round out the draft, we are taking the risks. We're going back down to Big. We're going back to our boy Process. Already told you why he's the best choice. Have to pick him for any draft I feel in this event. And we round it out with Mantu as the AWPer. All right, good rolls, good chance to farm. This is the Orb Ponderers version 2. This is the one that takes a lot more risks. We're riding on the strategy we developed with Astralis, where we try and pick into a team that can do that lower bracket run, get those points, and I feel like it's Big that's going to deliver. Let me know what you think about both my teams, and let me know what you're doing for this event, because I feel like Group B has a lot more openness to it. I feel like there's a lot more risks you can take, so I really want to know if anyone's like drafting Monte, for instance. I feel like they could be the team that really surprises, as always. So very interested to hear what you're drafting. Let me know, and good luck.